But let me start with a big question for the media industry. Who in the world would want to take on Roger Ailes? The legendary king of Fox News sits on the throne of cable talk and information with killer ratings and a pretty clear right-wing agenda. Every successful business seems to spawn lots of imitators, but there's no credible competitor that's ever emerged for Fox. Maybe people are simply intimidated by the powerful Ailes and his boss Rupert Murdoch. A few have tried and failed in the past, and recently Glenn Beck has shown some success expanding his online network, The Blaze, but even that is not currently rated by Nielsen, and it hasn't eaten into the market share of Fox very much, if at all. But now maybe there is someone who has a shot at doing this. The founder of the highly successful conservative website Newsmax, Christopher Ruddy, says he's ready to take on Fox. I hope he's got a helmet and body armor. Ruddy says he's launching Newsmax TV in June, and he joins me now. Chris, thanks for joining me.
Brian, great to be on with you.
Tell us what your plans are. What is it that you're hoping to do with Newsmax TV?
Well, perhaps saying that we are taking on Fox might be a bit of an overstatement. I think Newsmax wants to evolve its current internet business and join the world of TV everywhere. Newsmax, in many ways, is bigger than Fox News Online. ComScore, which rates the 60 million people that read News Politics, typically has us 1, 2, or 3. We had 11.5 million unique visitors last month. We were ahead of Fox News for politics. By June, we're hoping to have about 15 hours of live programming. By the end of the summer, we're hoping to be up to 18 or 21 hours.
And you told Business Week it'll be a kinder, gentler version of Fox News. Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, I think Fox is great at what it does, and it has a really powerful audience, a powerful message and audience. I think when Rupert Murdoch launched Fox News in 1996, he was a genius for realizing that there was a huge market outside of the CNN world that was not being really addressed by the mainstream media. And that market is probably about 100 million conservative-leaning Americans. And I think Fox News is taking in maybe 3 or 4 million of those. I think there's clearly a lot of room for Newsmax to come in where we're focused not just on politics, which Fox is focused on, but a lot of lifestyle issues, health, news and financial and practical information. So
that's what you would want to do differently. You'd want to be more than politics.
Exactly. We'd like to be more informational.
Why do you think nobody has been successful at doing this yet, though? It's been 15, 16 years since Fox News launched, and there hasn't been a complementary channel like the one you're describing.
Well, I think you should ask the guys that run Time Warner, your company, and a number of the other major media companies, Comcast and others. When you see, think about the statistics. The Pew study shows that 39% of Americans say they're conservative. 37% say they're moderate. When you ask them on the issues what they believe, they're fairly conservative. Only 23% of Americans say they're liberal. I mean, that's a very small number, and you have most of the major media networks fighting over that very small market share.
Speaking of Fox, you've talked about what you like about Fox. What do you not like about Fox? What do you dislike, or what do you think could be improved on?
Well, I think Fox, by its own admission, has changed programming and is trying to get back to its original mission of being fair and balanced. I think the last election, people saw it as very, very polarizing. If you look back at 1996 when Fox started, Pew says that the Republican Party had a favorability rating of 65%. Today, I believe the Republican Party is actually fighting for its survival, and its favorability rating is 35%. Obama has around a 50% favorable rating. The Republicans in Congress have an unfavorable rating of around 80%. So during these years that Fox has dominated sort of the Republican side of the news equation, I think there's been an overall effect that's not been positive for the Republican Party.
It sounds like you may agree with Gabriel Sherman's book. The conclusion at the end of his new book about Fox News says that Roger Ailes has hurt the Republican Party.
Well, I think Roger has done an incredible business. I don't know if he's hurt the Republican Party, but I don't think that all the voices that could potentially be heard from the Republican Party are being heard. People keep saying Roger is far right or conservative. I've never felt that Roger Ailes is that conservative. I think he is an American exceptionalist. I think he fiercely believes in American values and wants to promote those. I think some of the programming on Fox has come across to a certain degree polarizing. And I think the changes that they've made recently will actually help them. I think you're seeing in some of their programming hours, the ratings are way up.
I'll tell you the reason why I'm somewhat skeptical of the venture, and it's because cable and satellite providers seem to be very reluctant to add new channels to their systems. They want to remove channels, not add them. So how will you go about convincing Comcast and DirecTV and other companies to actually carry Newsmax TV?
Well, I think we have a great brand. Unlike a lot of people that come on television or cable, they oftentimes have no brand and no following. We already have 15 million people a month we're reaching. 49 million in our total reach online. So I think that gives us a powerful advantage. I also think Fox has demonstrated there's a huge market.
And how will you pay for all of this? How will you finance this?
Well, Newsmax has we're a very profitable company. Our marketing budget this year is going to be in the area of about $70 million, so we have an ability to reach a lot of Americans, to tell them about our website, to tell them about our new television channel. So I don't think money is going to be an issue.
One of the surprising lines in the Business Week profile of you was that you're now friends, or at least friendly, with Bill and Hillary Clinton. Is that right? Tell me about that.
Well, I was introduced to Bill Clinton by our mutual friend Ed Koch, the late former mayor of New York, back in 2007. We have become friends. I've recently got to know Hillary Clinton. I think she would make a good president. They asked me about that. I'm not saying that I'm voting for her at this point. But I did notice that a recent USA Today poll said 25% of Republicans would favor her, or potentially favor her for president in the next election. And I think that one of the things about the Clintons is that Americans admire them because of their commitment to keeping America strong and free.
And we're coming off several days of the CPAC conference. When you look out at the Republican field for 2016, possible challengers to Hillary Clinton if she runs, who do you like and who do you not like as much?
Well, my favorite is Jeb Bush. I live in Florida. I saw how he operated as governor. He did an incredible job as governor. He's very different than his brother. He appeals to all the constituencies of the Republican Party, but he's extremely forward-thinking. He did a cover story for Newsmax magazine over a year ago, and the headline was, "Growth is the answer." The Republican Party, if it's to survive, and that is a question in my mind, really has to become the party of opportunity and growth. We can't be again the party of no.
Hearing you talk about the Republican Party this way makes me wonder, could you support Hillary Clinton in 2016 instead?
Well, I think it's a little early to make that decision. She's not even the nominee of her party. She hasn't officially announced. I would certainly consider that, but I'd like to see who the Republicans nominate.
And getting back to the man I mentioned at the beginning, do you think Roger Ailes is going to support your effort here?
Well, I don't really think it's he should be supporting his network and what he does at Fox. I don't think we're looking for support. When I do Newsmax, we've never sought the support of Fox News for what we've done, and we've been, I think, a fairly good success online. So I don't really see Roger Ailes being a major figure in what we do.
Should a network like CNN be a little anxious about a startup like this also?
Well, I think we will pull from all the networks, including MSNBC. I want to have some really good, articulate liberals. Alan Dershowitz uses Newsmax right now as his homepage for his blogs. Our readers don't agree with everything Alan says, but he's really interesting, he's fascinating, he's unpredictable. I mean, that's the type of thing I want to have on Newsmax, not predictability, where people can tune in and learn something and hear opposing views that are not necessarily personally attacking each other and this type of thing in interviews.
Christopher Ruddy, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Brian.